All right, third time's the charm.
Yes, sir.
We're here talking about crypto, talking about trend, back with another episode, joined by Quinn, the co-founder
Hell
of
yeah.
Crypto Trend System, here to learn about all the good things that there is to talk about trend, and educate the world on it. So, welcome. Here we go. Let's get this show on the road. This is a fascinating clip of just some background on this. Cardano's founder, Charles Hoskinson, who I have done an immense amount of research on. Brilliant guy. He also co-founded Ethereum with Vitalik Buterin way back in the day. Um, Insane mathematician. Like, they do so much research and write these incredible white papers around Cardano, but also around just crypto in general, which I really respect. Uh, so much of their research and institutions with IOHK around the world, they really, really want the best for crypto. You know, they would love if Cardano is the crypto of choice for altcoins in the future, but I do wholeheartedly believe their institution just really wants crypto to win and really sees blockchain technology as something that everyone can benefit from. So I want us to take a look at this clip that talks about Bitcoin specifically, and also the recent news of a crypto bill that's trying to be passed right now in the United States, where they are trying to get stable coins as like the first legislation in the US government to really get a green light on, so that it can just go to the masses. The banks can start using them. People can start using them. You know, it's trackable, taxable, all this beautiful, structure around a very new scene. So we're going to play this. Want your opinion on it, and then maybe what we're looking for in the trend system based on information that's happening here.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Towards another crypto winter at all?
No.
No.
I think Bitcoin will be over 250,000 by the end of this year or next year.
What's going to drive that, do you think?
What'll happen is that the tariff stuff will be a dud, and that people will realize that the world is willing to negotiate, and it's really just U.S. versus China, and a lot of people will side with us, some people side with China. The markets will stabilize a little bit, and they'll get used to the new normal, and then the Fed will lower interest rates, and then you'll have a lot of fast, cheap money, and then it'll pour into crypto because it'll get reignited by the market structure bill and the Magnificent Seven entering in the stablecoin bill. So it'll stall for probably the next 3 to 5 months, and then you'll have a huge wave of speculative interest come probably August or September into the markets, and that'll carry through for probably another 6 to 12 months.
You don't think we're heading towards
It's
another
obviously
crypto
super bold statement by someone that has absolutely nothing to do with Bitcoin. Just first off, like, we'll go
Yep.
into more of the stablecoin stuff after this, but what's
Yeah.
your take on there being, you know, close to $250,000 Bitcoin by the end of this year?
That's he made some really good points where people like with the tariff situation, especially. My long-term target for Bitcoin, I'm not saying it's going to happen this year or next year, is equivalent to the market cap of gold. So from here, that's about a 10x or so. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that will happen soon. I'm talking longer term, 10 years out, maybe 15 years out. And the path to get there, that's
No.
speculative. You don't really, there's a thing called path dependency on how, like, let's say for certain Bitcoin will hit $1 million, right?
Yeah.
But you don't really know how it's going to get there. Is it going to go up to
sure.
500, go back down to 50, and then go back up?
Yeah.
Right? So for him to say there's no crypto winter, you don't know that for sure, right?
Yeah, no one
Maybe
knows. Yeah,
Michael Saylor gets wiped out. We see a huge liquidation or something,
Yeah.
and then you continue the climb back up. But I agree with the general thesis that it is bullish. Like the whole kind of economic situation globally right now, along with crypto,
Yeah.
that we're gonna go up. I want to add some interesting points about crypto, which make it more bullish. Is there's a lot of stickiness in crypto, which is one of the reasons why we like it. People put money in, and they usually don't take money out, either because they lose it or it's a real pain in the ass to withdraw. Whole bunch of reasons why.
Gas fees.
But
Yeah.
money that goes into crypto stays in crypto for the most part, which is really attractive for us. So if Bitcoin goes up, people take those profits and they go into other coins. That's kind of why the pattern has been. I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but the pattern of Bitcoin goes up and then you see an alt season, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
the money in crypto stays within crypto. That was a really interesting clip, though. He's obviously a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I found it fascinating because like he obviously wants Bitcoin to do well. There's no doubt about that. Mainly because like when exactly what you just hit. When Bitcoin does well, altcoins follow. However, he has no stake in Bitcoin. He wants Cardano to do well, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
There's really, it's really fascinating because I've watched so much of Charles Hoskinson over the years because ADA was one of the first investments that I decided to get into. And there is so much criticism from the Bitcoin community around Cardano, mainly because of two things. One is one's a proof of work and one's a proof of stake. The other is the decentralization of Cardano. You know, there's certainly a lot of it is owned by IOHK, which is like the company behind creating the actual asset. Where Bitcoin, like, you can make that argument to a certain extent because, you know, Satoshi Nakamoto owns more Bitcoin than anyone. But we don't know who that is, so it isn't completely decentralized in that sense. And, you know, just like two very different ideologies on what is decentralized currency there, and really just you have very, very different communities around that, despite Charles being very involved in Bitcoin from a very early stage. So yeah, I found this fascinating that, you know, someone who owns their own, you know, crypto company would make such a bold statement about something that isn't their own asset.
No, they would all benefit if Bitcoin goes up, and I think everyone's kind of realized there probably won't be a Bitcoin killer in the future. So it's a fight for second place, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Well, there's
so,
also nothing that does what Bitcoin does, you know? It, like, you can't really even make another Bitcoin at this point. Like, even if you were to duplicate the technology, you know? Like, the fact that Bitcoin has successfully never failed as a system since 2008, I believe. You know, that's when it first really came along. That's incredible, you know. We are in major banks all the time. I just tried to log into my BMO in Canada and I wasn't even allowed in. But,
brutal.
But you know what I mean? I want access to my money. I can't get it. But Bitcoin, like, all the time, you will always have access to it with any sort of peer-to-peer network. So let's touch on the crypto legislation. I know that's a really big topic, not just with the stablecoin bill, but I'll pull it up here in a second. Let me just pull this bad boy up. So the Senate voted late Monday to advance the Genius Act, which he's talking about here. So this was actually talked about before the bill actually got, you know, really like pushed forward.
I see.
With not necessarily this exactly, but obviously this is going to directly influence the US because it's pegged to the US dollar. With more legislation, do you think that actually helps trend? Because that in essence, it kind of de-escalates some of the volatility, but at the same time, it pushes the market forward. So I just wanted your opinion and your thoughts around, with more legislation, with more sort of certainty around cryptocurrency, what do we see with the trend system?
I think, first of all, the US government, maybe they're realizing that crypto's going to stick around and they want their piece of the pie. So what that means is they want to implement some controls on their end to kind of control it, get a slice for themselves.
Yeah, of course.
And implications for trend. That's a really interesting question. I'm not too sure. I think that if it means more money coming in, it's a good thing. Other than that, I think you would have to wait how it plays out. Maybe just this one act not a big deal. But then going into the future, seeing what they're planning next,
Yeah.
it's still, I think, too early to say, in my honest opinion.
Yeah. No, I think you're completely right in that sense because, for one, like, it's great that the US, of all places, is talking about legislation around crypto now. And we're seeing,
Yeah,
way more interest by the current government in the US versus, the last
definitely.
Democratic Party that was running it. So that's all fantastic. But when you think about crypto, and we've talked about this in the past,
Yep.
crypto is a global asset. It is not a
Yeah.
United States asset. Like, people are completely ignoring the fact that the thing the US is trying to do right now, Hong Kong has already done, weeks ago. And it's done. It's
Yeah.
completed. Like, they now
Mm.
have stable coins in use in Hong Kong. And that's just one country. We can talk about many, many others. But
Yeah.
El
Yeah.
Salvador, for example, another country that is just accumulating a mass amount of Bitcoin and mining it on their own
Yes.
energy. Uh, People tend to kind of ignore the fact because the US, from a like financial point of view, has always been like the dominant player. Uh,
Yep.
we even, like, when we're trading on the markets, like, there's a market close, and it's purely based around, not all of markets, but majority of them are based around US closing times. Crypto
Yeah.
doesn't really, have an end date. You're 24/7. I've woken up and been super excited about the gains I've made while I've slept, and vice versa. I've been incredibly sad about, like, all the money I lost overnight.
Pros
So
and cons to the 24/7, man. Yeah.
yeah. So what I wanted to kind of go into next is,
Mhm.
because we're seeing more legislation in the US and all the various countries around the world, we're kind of moving more towards a 24-hour market. And obviously the big
Mhm.
difference in trend now, with, crypto trend system, is the fact that we are working with the 24-hour frame versus,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
whatever it was before. So maybe touch on that a little bit and talk about trend over the course of a 24-hour frame.
So yeah, no, the trading 365 days a year
Mm-hmm.
versus 250 something days a year.
Yeah.
You have more days to trade,
Mm-hmm.
right? More trading days. That's, I think, a good thing
Yeah.
overall. Other than that, you're talking about globally. It's interesting on weekends, particularly
Mm-hmm.
crypto. If there are like if there's international news that affects the markets globally, you can't trade the actual stock market like the S&P 500. So what do people do as a proxy? They trade Bitcoin on the weekends,
Right.
which is interesting, which is,
Right.
it brings into question, like, if they're really bad, if there's a lot of bad news, then Bitcoin will sell off on the weekend, and then when the futures open up Sunday evening, um, that creates some really interesting scenarios where did people overreact or not.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Other than that, I think that you may start seeing like a 24/7 market in the States as well. It might
Mm.
transfer over. There have been talks about that last year. It's a pain in the ass for a lot of people, like, genuinely. Uh, your job just becomes a lot harder
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
start taking shift work. Like, for example, the Nikkei index in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have a lunch break.
Yeah, we do. That's so true.
It closes for like an hour. You
Yeah,
guys,
just
you
in
guys
the
all
middle
take
of the day.
lunch at the same time.
Yeah, 12
Yeah,
o'clock. Yep.
everyone packs up their stuff and
Yep.
go take lunch, and
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it's 24/7. Like, that is extremely chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe small chance of that happening, but it is interesting because the news cycle and everything happening, it's 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
right? Big
Mm-hmm.
stuff just happens, and then right now crypto is used as a proxy for all other markets
Yeah.
because it's available 24/7. So for trend, it's a little more volatility. I think it's fine. It's not like a huge thing, but
Mm.
I'd say it's nice.
Yeah, yeah. I could certainly see it working towards, like, the positives of trend. And you brought up,
Yeah,
many, many great points there where when we're not just talking about one US market, we're talking about, like, a global market here, all
yeah,
trading on just Bitcoin. You touched on, the pain in the ass of keeping track of 24-hour frame rate. But let's go back to
Yes.
your
Yes.
experience as a day trader, because that's really where
Yeah.
this interest got started, even before crypto. So talk to me a little bit about your experience, how you got into day trading, and how you ended up kind of going through your career now and into
Absolutely.
being so interested in trend.
Yep. So it all started over 5 years ago now. Somehow it's already been that long, which is insane. But it started during COVID. I pretty much quit video games. I was looking for something else to do, and I always had a passion for the markets in a way where even in school, like high school, it always interested me, and the stock picking things you do in class, I'd have a lot of fun in. So I knew it was something that I'd gravitate towards, and then I went head first into it starting 5 years ago. How I started that journey was trading the S&P 500 futures for the first year and a half. It went all right. It was mostly break even, and then I transitioned to crude oil trading, crude oil futures,
Yeah.
CL contract. That is a very fun market. I felt like I had a better read and understanding of it for day trading, because I've transitioned since then over a year ago. Let me run you down what it takes to be like a successful trader. I was also working a full-time job as well. So I would wake up early before the market opened. I would trade for the first hour and a half before I went into work. And then I'd go to work, go to the gym, come back home, and I would replay the day, my trading session, and then I would do my review. And that
Crazy.
is so it's such a huge commitment if you want to be successful. And I did that for a few years nonstop while working a job. It's exhausting. And if you take one day off, you stop learning things. Have you heard Michael Phelps' thing about his swimming?
No,
He
but you
had to
can
train
remind me.
every single. So when he was training for the Olympics, he was swimming every single day, multiple times a day. If he took one day off, it took him 2 days to catch up where he was. Very similar to the kind of trading I was doing, where you're staring at the order flow all day on the depth of market screen, and you're reading the orders come in. So you have to be hyper focused as long as you can. You kind of develop that skill from where you can maybe focus and read it for 5 minutes, and then you work your way up to like an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
So end of last year, March 2024. I was doing pretty well. If people know what funded accounts are, I'd been trading the same one for about a year and a half, and I was up almost 100% on it. But I was just too exhausted to continue. The fact that again, you trade in the morning before work, and then you have all your review afterwards, and it's nonstop. On the weekends, the markets are closed, but that's when you're doing your analysis on your strategies. There's no break to it whatsoever, and it was consuming my life to the point where I didn't love doing that as much. I still love trading and I love the markets, but I couldn't physically continue to do that. So I transitioned to more of developing systematic and algorithmic trading. That's kind of where I branched off starting last year, over a year ago now. More looking at, first markets where I have a better edge. The fact is, crude oil futures, S&P 500 futures, any FX markets, you're trading with the big boys, the biggest of the big. Half the time, it's Citadel on the other side of that trade, and you're competing with them in this zero-sum game. It's really fucking hard to win against them.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So the one thing I was looking after where someone as a smaller retail guy, where can I win? You have to choose the casino you want to play at.
Yep.
I would much rather play with the handicapped kids with small bankrolls versus the PhDs sitting at their desks in Chicago with $2 million worth of software and data.
Yeah. Bit of a different
That's
ball
just the
game,
facts.
eh?
That's the reality of it. So that's where I started really looking more into crypto, because some of the edges here, the capacity is too small for those bigger guys to even consider. Right? That's changed a little bit. Like they're definitely in Bitcoin now, Ethereum, those bigger markets, they will trade.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I got my journey into what's it called? Crypto.
Mm-hmm.
And then trend was something that came up. I was reading Rob Carver's books. I actually read the first one in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't think much of it because it's about trend system trading in regular financial markets, and for that you need at least a couple $100,000 for contract size, and I didn't have that at the time.
Yeah.
So it didn't really
Yeah.
make sense for me, and I didn't think to apply it to crypto.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, I think 7 months ago now, realized that it is possible to apply this thing to crypto, and that's where I delved headfirst into it. Kind of, oh, there is a huge opportunity here where I'm a guy. Actually at a physical commodities trading firm. I work on the trading floor there. I love my job. I'm working up in that office there. I want to continue doing that, but also I like participating. I like putting my own risk on in my own time. So
Mm-hmm.
trend was a great balance to do that. It's
Yeah.
something that runs automatically, but the returns and the volatility of it are better than anything I could do while actively day trading, 12 hours a day. So it's strike the perfect balance for me myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super long-winded story there, but I think I got most of the details out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sure the viewers really appreciate that, and it's cool to hear it, from
Yeah,
start to finish because I, like, obviously we lived together for,
we
3
did.
years there, and I got to see snippets of your journey, but to hear
Yeah,
it, how it all played out, it's obviously not living with you anymore, in the whole
for sure.
other side of the world.
Yep.
It's really cool to hear how you've come all the way around to doing trend, and
I'm
we
not
do have
stopping at
a
trend.
yeah.
Um, I wanna. There's other interesting edges in crypto that
Hmm.
I've been exploring, but trend's the main one because it's the bread and butter, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we talked about it a lot in the last episode, but just the opportunity to take off risk, which, crypto, that's like the number one problem that most people are facing, is they are just too scared to get into it. They don't understand
Yep.
it,
Mhm.
and they don't want anything to do with it because they don't want to lose their whole bag, which we completely understand. But
Most
trend,
people
yeah.
when they buy for the first time, the what happens from what I've seen is they're thinking about it for a long
Mm-hmm.
time.
I'm seeing that in everyday life right now
They're
as we
tempted.
speak.
They're
Yep.
tempted about it. They're thinking they're on the edge,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
then they forget about it. They look at the news. Oh, it's up another 20%. Damn, I should have bought, but now it's too high. What do I do? And then they kind of forget about it again. They're contemplating still.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look maybe a week or two later.
Yeah.
Fuck, it's up another 20%. And they face that same dilemma. And then eventually, it'll get too much for them. The FOMO kind of starts.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll usually buy right at the top
Yep.
if they
Yep.
do decide to purchase.
Yep.
Um, and then you just have a multi-year drawdown, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
sucks holding, and then maybe you get scared off of crypto forever after that until the next time you hit that FOMO peak.
Yep.
That's a nice thing about the trend system is obviously when the trend flips, money gets lost. That's
Mm-hmm.
just the nature of it because it goes all the way up. You don't take profits right at the top. You
Yep.
have to wait for it to come down some for you to take profit.
Mm-hmm.
So every time it flips, you lose a little bit of from your peak equity.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into the drawdowns of trend later. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
plan. But at least you're not buying the top and holding it for a few years, right?
Yeah.
It's a great way to get exposure and enter in at any time.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good transition, honestly. And maybe before we get into that, uh, because there is so much fear around getting into crypto, we
Yep.
talk a lot, just between the two of us, about diversification and why
Yes.
that's so important for trends. So maybe we can touch
Hmm.
on that first before we kind of dive into the charts here. And or if you want to bring up the
Yes.
charts to explain diversification, please feel free to.
I'll
But
I'll first start talking about it, and then I'll
mm,
bring in the charts.
yeah.
So really interesting thing about trend is the more uncorrelated markets you trade, the bigger your returns. So trading one uncorrelated market, like one market, versus let's say 5 markets, you're going to make more money with the 5. So the more markets, the happier you are. With trend itself, there's no free lunch. Like with any trading system, there's no free money for the most part. If you want absolutely free money, you're looking at government bonds. Collect your 5%, beat inflation by a little bit.
Yeah.
That's because then you're backed by the full weight of the United States military or whatever military, whatever country you're buying from. So why does trend actually make money? I think I wanted to talk about that today, is because it kind of sucks a little bit, the hold and do trend.
Yeah.
Like most days, you don't make money.
Yeah.
Your win rate on any individual trade is around 40%. And most days, it's a little loss, or it's nothing, or it's flat. And there's only a few days a year where all your money is made. Have you heard of the, what's it called? Oh, I forget this. Fuck. I was thinking about this today too, man. I was gonna bring this up, but now it's just completely forgot.
It might come back later. There's no
It might come
pressure
back
around
later.
it.
That's all good. I know. I'll give you an analogy.
Okay.
And I forget what the actual rules called.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but it's a law. This exists everywhere. Once you see it in one thing, you'll see it everywhere. In a hockey game or in like a hockey NHL season,
Yeah.
right? The square root of the number of players on the team will score half the goals.
Ah, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
trading, the square root of all participants will make half the money. Anything creative like that, that's the law.
Yeah.
In trend, the square root of all the trading days will make you the most money. So it's only a couple days a year where you're eating so good. The rest of the year, you're kind of just, nothing is happening. You're losing a little bit of money.
Yeah.
That's where, that's the kind of risk you take on when you trade trend, and that's why it works.
And that's why it's such a long-term vision, right? Like if you're
Definitely.
if you're trying to gamble, go buy like, shit coins and hope for the best.
Yes. Go high leverage,
Yeah.
shit coins, and good luck to you.
Yeah.
Right?
But
Because you're not looking over a month, any given month of trend, it's probably flat or loses a little bit of money. All of 2024, most of the gains were just from November for trend. That's just the way it is, right? So if you only traded it for 3 months out of the year, you were shit out of luck. You didn't make money. So it's a long-term investment and commitment when you trade trend. You have to commit to it, or else you won't make money.
Yeah. And I would say as well, like on the flip side, I've been through numerous crypto winters at this point, and
Yes.
I do think that when you're going through such a bear market, being in trend is so much safer than just holding on to the assets yourself. I mean, we talked about it briefly last week, but if we're still touching on the topic of diversification, I had well over $1,000 in Luna, and that went to literally zero.
Literally zero, yeah.
Literally, not even a cent of that is left. So, when you're in trend and you're diversified a lot more, you don't run into this issue, and also it's going to pick up on the fact that we're heading into a bear market, and it will short for you, or it will take off. Leverage
even
position.
worst case scenario, where let's say you're max long one coin, and it goes to zero in a day, like you have another Luna situation. That's only a small part of your portfolio that's hit. There's a maximum you can lose if an individual coin completely loses everything, which is really nice. Unless you have full confidence about your coin picks and you're that guy, right? Which most people, they don't have the time or the energy or the resources to even do that. They just want a basket, right?
You're not that guy.
No, I'm not that guy. You
No
know,
one's that guy.
not many people are. Everyone may think they're that guy at one point until they realize they have that moment that they're not that guy. You know,
Yeah.
those. It's a lot of like survivorship bias
Mm-hmm.
because you hear about one guy who bought $100 of bonk
Yeah,
when it was like $10,000 market cap and now he has 20 million.
Yeah.
Well, for every one of those guys, there are 100,000 guys that thought they were that guy too.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. And you don't hear those guys' stories because it's not interesting. I
Yeah.
put $100 in a coin and lost all my money. That's the expected result, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
So I guess like since we're on the topic now, let's
Mhm.
open up some charts and look at some of these
Let's
major
do it.
altcoins. Last
Yeah,
week
which
we
ones?
last week we looked at Bitcoin and Pepe because we wanted to compare a little bit like Bitcoin dominance versus like a major meme
Yes.
coin. But let's go into like the bigger altcoin projects, maybe things like
Mhm.
Ethereum, ADA, XRP. Those are the three that really jump to mind. But if you have any other interesting ones that you want to talk about, then feel free.
Perfect. So from last week, Ethereum hasn't moved too much relative to Bitcoin, because I made a point about this last week. If we wanted to see ETH performance on those big moves up, we would want to see it outperforming Bitcoin, and that didn't happen this week at all. It didn't make a new high here when Bitcoin made a new all-time high. If we go in, for everyone that's new, this is a candlestick chart. This is our trend system, and this is just a volatility estimate. So the higher this white line is, the longer our system is, and the lower it is on a score of like 10 to minus 10, the more short it gets. So right now it's still about the same as it was last week. Maybe a little more. 2.5 out of 10. So it's just we have a small long in Ethereum right now, especially with how high the volatility is at over 100%. So we have a super small position, and it's just been weaker. Nothing really to note right now. If Bitcoin continues its strength, we want to check if Ethereum is breaking these highs and holding up here, or if it's just going to stay in this abysmal range it's been in for the last 4 years,
Yeah.
Moving on, this surprised me this week. XRP and ADA not performing very well. They are
They had their
quite
move
weak.
a few weeks ago. That was like their big
Yes.
run, and
Yes.
many were expecting another big run up,
Mhm.
off of that momentum. But we've really consolidated quite nicely.
Yeah. So the high on XRP was made on May 12th, and it hasn't really hit since. It's experienced a significant drop from 2.6 to around 2.3. While Bitcoin is still way at its highs. It actually flipped a little bit short, flopping right now. There's no real trend in XRP that we're taking advantage of for pretty much the whole of this year.
Yep.
This is when trend loses money. We're losing money on XRP right now. We're waiting for a big move in either direction. I do think it will see a similar leg as we saw in November, which we caught an extraordinary amount of. I think because this is quite a big trading range that it's in. From 1.6 to 3.39. That's a huge trading range. So once we break out of these highs, the sky's the limit for
Right.
XRP. I don't know when. I couldn't tell you when, but if Bitcoin is hitting $250,000, like the buddy proclaimed,
Yeah.
you would definitely see an XRP move similar. ADA, similar story, maybe a little stronger, but not really. Volatility, 80%, about average for it. Extremely small long position right now. We've been long, not very long on this, just since May 8th. Again, room to highs for ADA is huge, but on the leg up, from the highs it's made into it is further down than other coins, 100%. You know, you could argue more room to run up, absolutely, but it's showing some relative weakness right now. If you start seeing these one time framing up and like a huge up candle progressively, obviously that's fantastic. I would be really looking at if we can climb up above these highs. I want 1.15, 1.16, the move up from there. But you're asking a lot to go from 0.75 to 1.15. But that's when I'd be really looking at seeing the huge breakout move to the upside back to like the old cycle's highs.
Yeah. If you don't mind, can you keep that open for a second there? Because Ada did
Absolutely.
something really interesting in March. I don't know if you can see that, where we went on is that March? Yeah, right there.
Yep.
See that humongous green candle that's just like, you know,
Yes.
perfect straight line, beautiful. We love to see that, and then into
Huge.
a direct, red candle down on
Yes.
literally the very same day, if not the next day.
Yes.
What occurs in trend when we see something like that? Because this is like not unique to ADA. We see this across many other altcoins, where they go on these unbelievably explosive days into just huge, almost like a pump and dump. Really.
Yes.
Um,
So
Yeah, please explain how that works for trend.
I would love to. This is a market phenomenon. I would say you can trade this, you can day trade this kind of phenomenon on a smaller time frame for people who are interested in doing that. But this was a news generated event. It was some kind of Trump announcement. I forget exactly what it was.
It was
But
them adding it to their crypto reserve.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Right. That's what I thought. I wasn't for sure.
Yeah.
News events like this, where you see a huge initiative, right? Sometimes it continues to go and go and go. A lot of the other times, I call it the return to the scene of the crime. So if you see a huge explosive move from news specifically, prices will tend to trade back to it, which they did very soon after, right?
Yep.
What it means for trend, unfortunately, it means we lost money that day. We lost a lot of money that day. We were caught short.
Yeah.
About zero, but not a lot. But like, it went from about half of positions, half max position size short, and we were short from maybe around 0.8.
Yep.
And it meant we covered around 1.1. So it was a loss, and then we flipped a tiny bit long, only to get back more short around 0.91, where we then kind of made back some of our money as it continued to go down more. So these, especially reversals, a lot of trend reversals, if you go and you look at not even just crypto, but regular financial markets, you will see a huge expansion of volatility around key inflection points where trend reverses.
Right.
That's a common pattern.
Yeah.
That's almost tradable in and of itself. Not much to say, but it's not great. Obviously, if it's in your direction, it's fantastic, but usually will retest and then decide where it wants to go from there.
Yeah, regardless of whether that's going down first or up first. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think that's a good transition then into, maybe we should talk a little bit about what are the negative sides of what can go wrong in trend. And we've only really talked about the positives, but I think, to be clear to the audience, to show that we're really here to be in your best interest. Let's talk a little bit about the negative side of trend.
Absolutely. I may use some charts as an example, so I'm going to leave them up for now.
Yeah.
Negative sides of trend. I touched on a few earlier, but you don't make money every single day. You make money a few times.
Yeah.
The win rate around 40%. Most of your trades are small losses, and then you get these huge winners. Right? So some people, they don't have the patience for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I understand if you want more of a, some strategies are complete opposite, where you win every single day. You see it a lot with like option selling, where you have these really small wins and you're just winning all the time.
Yeah.
And then all it takes is that one day to wipe out half your stack. So it's the
Yeah.
opposite of that.
Right. Yeah.
It's really pick your poison. That other way is how they would call it is picking up pennies in front of a bulldozer or a train.
Great analogy.
Right? You get those coins, but then one day you get run over. Maybe in trend we're the bulldozer, but we miss the most times.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a downside. There's no completely risk-free strategy that's going to make you money every day and guarantee returns. There's risk in every kind of strategy you employ. That's the fact of it. Other downsides is you need markets to trend.
Yeah, we talked
I don't
about that
care
before.
yeah, how smart you are, how good of a trend system you put together. If stuff is going sideways, you simply will not make money.
Yeah, that's why you will never make. There's no stable coins in our trend system.
Let's
just put it that way.
It'd be so terrible.
Yeah.
It'd be so terrible. The moment it depegs, we would make a little bit of money, but no, that'd be just awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, no stable coins for sure. Those are the big downsides, I say. Do you have any questions about those or anything?
No, not necessarily. I just wanted us to touch
Cool.
on the negative sides a little bit so that people know this
Definitely.
isn't, like the ultimate, like there's no downside to being involved in trend. Like this does take a certain level of patience, a certain
Yes,
level of
yes, yes.
understanding. However, not like what we touched on earlier where you're day trading, spending hours and hours in your chair having to stare at screens and charts all
Yes.
day. Very different strategy here where time is very much so on your side where you can spend it doing the things you love, and that's really what
Huge
we love about
advantage,
trend.
man, is you can click trade all day and you probably won't outperform our trend system. So think
Yeah.
about that. You can spend 40 hours a week grinding away in any market you want. You may beat us. You probably won't.
Yeah.
Like most 95% of active traders don't make money. That's the harsh reality of it. You can work on other things. I myself, you yourself, we work full-time jobs and we
Yeah.
invest our money into trend, and it's a great way to perform. Like a paycheck is infinite sharp.
Yeah.
Right? It's the best trading strategy. Is just collecting that paycheck and then investing it, right? And you compound that way instead of trying to turn your, couple $1,000 stack into 2 million, because you're just gonna get wiped out.
Yeah. No, having
Right?
another source of income that isn't purely on your trading to then
Mm-hmm.
put into trend system is, the best thing to do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's
The
like
way I look at it is, I'm not the kind of guy who's gonna invest everything in the S&P 500, collect 8% a year, and do that for 40 years. I want to take more risk than that, and I want more returns than that. Crypto trend specifically, is the perfect solution for me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we both have other interests as well. Like, we love crypto. We love, investing. We love trading, all this stuff. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I love spending my time training martial arts. I still play video
Yes.
games.
Yes.
Have a full-time job. There's other things and I love my job, and so do you. There's other things we want to be doing with our time, and then really, like, that was the big selling point for me when you were
Yes.
first introducing it to me, is the
Yeah,
fact that
yeah.
I don't have to necessarily change my life. I can use my skill set that I'm gaining there and apply it
Yeah.
to what I'm doing here, and that's like the beauty for me.
Yeah. Don't have to stress about, are you in the right coins?
Yeah.
Right? What if it rugs on me? It's so good in that kind of case. You don't have to spend any time kind of researching what coin's going to go up. Should you buy Bitcoin right now? What's the best time to get in?
Yeah.
All that you don't have to think about anymore, and you can just focus on doing yourself. Trend will run in the background, rebalance once a day, and provide for you over a longer time period probably.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
not guaranteeing returns here.
yeah, no, not at all. But like markets are insanely emotional, and so are a lot of people in finance, to be fair. And like your
Yeah.
strategy when it comes to, compounding your money should not be. It should be very
Yep.
much so statistics based, something that you can
Mhm.
put your money into, have faith in that system, and let it trend for you. So,
And I work with professional traders. They're not speculative traders, as in like they're not predicting price direction. They make money in different ways,
mm-hmm,
but they're still participating in the market and putting risk on for
mm-hmm,
the company.
mm-hmm.
The amount of motions I've heard from them about the stock market, like during the Trump tariff debacle, I heard one of them say like, "Oh, stocks are going down. It's just terrible." And then not just like last week or two, he was on the phone with another guy from a bank saying like how he should have bought more tech stocks. He didn't buy any tech stocks. Professional traders, they do this for a living. They go through the same emotional cycle. Everyone does, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take that away from the trading strategy and just implement that, and you'll be so much happier.
Yeah. Any final points you want to touch on here before we wrap this up?
Final points. I have a fun little thing so we can test ourselves next week.
Yeah.
Next week this time, what do you think Bitcoin's price is?
Ooh, what are we at right this moment?
Right this moment, man. According to Binance Perpetual Futures, 109059.
109059. I personally think we might be going down.
Okay.
I think we've had a really, really healthy run of Bitcoin going up. I
Yep.
think we need one more week of really good consolidation, which we just started to see in the last few days. And
Yeah.
I think the following week, so what is that going to be, our fourth episode? I think we're
Yeah.
going to sit here and say like, wow, did we ever rip? And
Okay.
to be
Yeah.
honest, I think next it's altcoins' turn. Like I think Bitcoin
Yep.
goes down a little bit, and we might
Yep.
even see altcoins go up. That's
Okay.
my personal opinion. Yeah.
I like that. All right. I have the opposite take.
Okay, let's see.
I'm seeing complete strength in Bitcoin right now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to give you an exact price. 118.
118, really?
118.
I think we're going down to like 104, 103 again.
Okay. Okay. No,
Yeah.
that's fair enough. Fair enough. We will have to see. I just think that'd be fun. Obviously, I'm not going to take any positions based on our little prediction. I have,
Not at all. Yeah.
it's just for fun. I'm going to let Trend do everything for me if it goes down or if it goes up. I just think that this is going to be fun, seeing what
Yeah, no, I
happens
think so
over the
too.
next week.
Yeah. No, I really see a lot of strength in some of the major altcoins right now, and
Yep.
they're it's due time. We see a little altcoin season coming, and
Hell yeah.
I'm all for, don't get me wrong, Bitcoin continuing to run up.
Yeah.
Will I be a sad man that I was wrong? Quite the opposite, actually. I really do hope we see
sure.
Bitcoin run up, but that's just where I'm
sure.
standing right now. Yeah, let's see. I think that'll be really
like it, man.
interesting. Yeah, that's a good way to
Thanks for
end
the-
each episode. Actually, I think will be
Yeah.
fun little
Yeah, I
thing.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the conversation today, man.
Thank you very much as well, Quinn. We'll wrap this episode up, and we'll see you all next week.
Sweet.